I am contracted with Beach Cities Health District, and I also see clients one-on-one in my office in Palos Verdes. I'm still mainly virtual, but I'm slowly bringing people back. And so it's great to do the work that I do and to have such flexibility during a crazy time like this to still do virtual like we're doing today. So I'm happy to be here today to talk about eating well after cancer treatment, things that we can do to minimize the risk for recurrence, as well as stay healthy overall and minimize risk for other diseases too. So let's go to the next slide. So the purpose of today's workshop are to identify lifestyle strategies to decrease risk of cancer recurrence as well as other diseases. We're going to determine specific dietary, nutrition, and exercise patterns to improve overall physical health, and which also carries over to emotional health. If you feel well physically, oftentimes you'll feel well emotionally as well. And then to wrap it up, we're going to demonstrate a nutrient-rich recipe, which is going to be a lot of fun to show. I wish we could demo it and give out samples, but we can't do that over a virtual platform like this. And so the purpose of today's workshop as well is that we're going to shift the focus, like we talked about last month, of identifying strategies to overcome some of the harsh side effects of treatment. Last time we really had a high focus on preventing weight loss, maintaining weight, and sort of implementing just a lot of high calorie foods, a lot of high fat foods in order to support and maintain a stable weight during treatment. So we're going to shift that focus over to what do we need to be doing to minimize recurrence of disease and prevent other disease too. So as you know, the next phase in cancer survivorship after treatment is recovery. So these top 4 recommendations fall in line with the 2020 American Cancer Society guidelines. So as you can see, achieving a healthy body weight is the top one. I don't know if they're in any particular order. Engaging in regular physical activity, following a healthy eating pattern, which will get more into detail as we progress today, and then avoiding alcohol use. So a lot of these, or actually most of these 4 recommendations from the ACS are also in line with the American Diabetes Association and also the American Heart Association as well for overall health. So let's talk about the first one, achieving a healthy body weight. So what this means is that we really want to aim toward a stable, natural body weight. We want to be able to practice sustainable eating and exercise patterns, which in turn will support a healthy body weight. We really want to try to limit like Western type diet patterns, which we'll talk about later, and then as well as avoid yo-yo dieting. So it's important to be mindful that healthy habits are just as beneficial, even if like your BMI won't budge, and that it's important to remember that the further pursuit, if the pursuit of more weight loss just isn't sustainable or practical, then it's still important to focus on healthy behaviors that support overall health. And I want you to know that there's lots of research being done that is focusing on specific health promoting behaviors that we're going to talk about today, even if the BMI sort of doesn't budge into, where the doctor wants it to be, or where, the graph says that it should be for a quote unquote healthy weight, if that makes sense. So that's where the term natural body weight comes in. So engaging in regular physical activity. So studies to date link more aerobic activity to minimizing the risk of cancer and other diseases. Specifically, adults need about 150 to 300 minutes a day of moderate, intense physical activity, actually a week. So that is an error on that. particular slide. So it's 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate, intense physical activity. That would be a lot of activity if it was per day. Or 75 minutes to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity a week, or an equivalent of the two. So 300 is optimal. So that's like an hour a day, 5 days a week. But as long as you can hit, 30 minutes, 5 days a week, then that would be ideal. So muscle strengthening is also recommended at least 2 days a week, although the research shows the benefits of aerobic activity to be the most beneficial. There's just not enough studies to say that for sure muscle strengthening does have the same positive effects in minimizing disease recurrence and risk. Although muscle strengthening activity does keep our tissue more metabolically active. So meaning if you do engage in muscle strengthening activity, you're making your muscles and your tissue more metabolically active, which burns more calories overall. And then you're also strengthening your bones as well when you're doing activity that has that strengthens your muscles, and so that leads to decreased risk for osteoporosis. So what about kids and teens? So children and teens are recommended to do about an hour of moderate to vigorous activity a day. Overall, teens and adults, the general recommendation is to limit screen time and sitting, and then keeping in mind that any movement is better than no movement at all. Kids are lucky now that sports are starting up again and PE happens in person or online for school. But I feel like as adults, we have to sort of intentionally plan movement into our day. At least that's how I feel. I don't know if anybody else can relate. So it's important to be intentional if you don't have regular like classes or activities planned, to really get up and get moving for the benefit of your heart and for your muscles too. Okay. So let's talk about healthy eating patterns. What does that mean? So it's important to know that various dietary patterns have been studied and looked at, such as the Mediterranean pattern of eating, the DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension, the USDA Healthy Eating Index, and also the Harvard Alternate Healthy Eating Index. And they all share similar features and patterns, which we're going to talk about today, which include mostly plant foods, not only plants. So we're not talking vegan, but definitely a shift to include more plant-based eating. Healthy proteins, lower processed meats and red meats, and lower unsaturated and trans fat and limited added sugars overall, which we'll talk about specifically those things in more detail a little bit later on. And then studies have really shown that with the consumption of more plants, there's less oxidative damage to our cells. There's better insulin. There's better insulin resistance, and that there's overall less inflammation in the body, to support a healthy immune system and body overall. And then there's also more fiber in this healthy pattern of eating. And when we have enough fiber in our diets, it just creates a healthy gut. And so that's really important. You have a healthy gut, things are moving along, and there's just less risk for certain diseases. There's 2 randomized controlled trials that did find lower overall cancer of breast cancer risk for those following a Mediterranean style of eating. So that's important to note. So there's definitely consistent evidence that similar patterns of eating have really great benefits. So it includes whole grains, colorful fruits and veggies, plant-based proteins, fish and or poultry, so like the white meats, and then monounsaturated fatty acids for our fats, or polyunsaturated fatty acids, which we'll talk about what those things are. Some other components of a healthy eating pattern include limited sugar sweetened drinks, limited red meats and processed meats, limited highly processed and refined grains, because there is a difference between highly processed foods and minimally processed foods, limited saturated and trans fats. So notice how all of those are limited. So it's not complete avoidance, it's just making sure that the overall intake of those particular things are, just a small portion of the diet and not your whole diet. And then avoiding alcohol. So these are some, other than minimizing disease risk, it's important to understand that this style of eating is really consistent evidence of, like I said, decreased disease risk. It's also very sustainable. There's lower environmental impact overall, and it also promotes social and emotional well-being. There's also benefits to cardiovascular health and also diabetes control with this pattern of eating. So when we talk about whole grains, it's important to understand, like, just basic whole grain anatomy is that, there's three parts to a grain or the kernel. So there's the germ, there's the bran, and the endosperm. And so once that whole grain is processed, then different parts are stripped away. And then when different parts of the grain are stripped away, that's when you lose a lot of the fiber and a lot of the nutrition. So the goal is to have at least half of our grains that we consume be whole grains. And we'll talk about examples of that later on. Whole grains also provide the body with a lot of fiber, again, because you're getting the entire grain intact, and that's where all the fiber is. Whole grains also promote regular bowel movements, which in studies show that there's less exposure to the gut, to carcinogens if we're having regular bowel movements. And this is really apparent for colon cancer diet research. Evidence is either conflicting or there's just not enough, for other cancers. But, overall, the more fiber you have in the diet, the more nutrients that you have, which is beneficial for your heart. And like I said, diabetes control too. So like I said, the recommendation is that at least half of the grains that we eat are whole grains, which, as you can see on this slide, here are some examples: whole wheat bread, pasta, crackers. Just because the bread is brown doesn't mean that it's whole grain. So it's really important to read the label and make sure that the first ingredient, is whole wheat. And it's important to look at the fiber content of the label too of the bread and make sure that it's at least 2.5 grams of fiber, like, per serving. Whole wheat pasta and whole wheat crackers are also considered whole grains because the grain is intact. Quinoa, popcorn, brown rice, oatmeal, and buckwheat are some examples of other whole grains. Fruits and vegetables. So 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit a day and 2.5 to 3 cups of vegetables a day are the current recommendations. There's so much strong evidence of the benefits of fruits and vegetables if they're eaten in the whole form, as opposed to getting that like from a juice or from something that, like, a fruit's technically a fruit, but it's processed. So eating the fruit and vegetable in its whole form is really important to do. Carotenoids, specifically rich fruits and vegetables, are those that have the yellow, orange, or the red pigments. And there's a lot of evidence that's pointing to those particular colored fruits and vegetables that have a good chance in the studies to minimize risk for cancer. Cruciferous veggies as well, such as cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower. We want to make sure that we're having a regular intake of those guys too, which again in the studies have been shown to be beneficial for minimization of cancer risk and disease overall. And then finally, the allium vegetables, which include onions and garlic. I get a lot of questions, well, do onions or garlic have any nutrition because they're white? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Any kind of fruits and vegetable is going to have phytochemicals and antioxidants. And so whatever color that you see is going to be giving your body some sort of benefit. Tomato products, and then also legumes are a big one. And a fun fact that legumes are considered a starchy vegetable and a protein. Legumes are include beans, peas, and lentils. So here's a really nice infographic that I like to show because I just think this does a great job of illustrating all the different colors, really of the rainbow and where all of the fruits and vegetables fall into. And so I got this from the American Heart Association. It's free to download if anybody wants it. And like I said, it kind of just categorizes all of the fruits and vegetables into colors and just illustrates the benefits of what eating the rainbow looks like. This is another infographic from the American Heart Association. And again, it illustrates reasons to add color to the diet. It talks about lots of the good. So, you're going to be getting fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals from the fruits and veggies. You're not going to be getting any sodium or saturated fat or trans fats or things that we're really trying to limit in the diet. And then they're very versatile and flexible foods. So if you get creative, you can figure out ways to add them to all of your meals and your snacks, if that's something that you wanted to look at. And then they really are a whole body health boost. Like I said before, they're beneficial to your heart, to your blood sugar control, and to your overall health and to your gut too. So what do we mean by plant-based proteins? That's one of the things that's included in a healthy pattern of eating. So when we think plant-based proteins, we have to think of legumes, which I said before include beans, lentils, and peas. Any soy foods, so like tofu, edamame, or tempeh. Quinoa is actually considered a plant-based protein. Nuts and nut butter. And then also seeds are some examples of plant-based proteins. So we sort of talked about this earlier in the term fiber. So fiber is included in your fruits and veggies, whole grains, legumes, and also nuts and seeds. And so I really think that one of the reasons why the focus is shifting into more plant-based is so that we can get more overall fiber in our diets, because they do keep our digestive system working properly, and they do promote a healthy gut. So this slide talks about fats. We need fat in our diet. Fat helps with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Fat is also important for our brain health. It makes food taste good, and we need it for hormone regularity as well. And so the fats that we want to focus on include the monounsaturated fatty acids, which include olive oil, canola oil, peanuts, peanut oil, avocado, and avocado oil. And then also the polyunsaturated fats, abbreviated PUFAs, which include almonds, walnuts, sesame oils, pecan, sunflower oil, and safflower oil. And then the omegas too are included in that group. And the reason for that is that they have been shown to be beneficial for overall heart health. And then also to meet your fat requirements, the research is strong that we want to limit the saturated trans fats. So that leaves us with more of a plant-based source of fat, which comes from the mono and the polys. And then the saturated fats, which we do want to limit, are coconut oil, vegetable shortening, palm oil, butter, cheese, lard, certain meats and poultry, egg yolks, and full fat dairy. And then the trans fats are going to be the fats that are included in a lot of fast foods, baked goods, shelf-stable foods, and fried foods. So I know there's not anything on these slides that talk about dairy, but I do get that question a lot. And so I will say that dairy does contribute a good source of protein, calcium, and vitamin D in the diet, which are all beneficial in average amounts for lots of reasons. So I think an option would be to limit the saturated fat, choosing a low fat or a reduced fat version, of dairy, so that you're still getting the benefits of the calcium and the vitamin D and the protein, but you're limiting the saturated fat. So we talked earlier about limiting sugar sweetened drinks. So this is one of the easiest ways to kind of meet that guideline of limiting added sugars. So if we can really replace sugary drinks with water overall, then we're really going to be moving toward limiting added sugar in the diet. Because sugary drinks really do add calories pretty quickly, and they don't offer a lot of nutrients, except for maybe like a juice that's fortified with calcium or vitamin D. But overall, the sugary drinks don't really offer much nutrition. And then also keeping in mind that sugary drinks could take the place of other nutrient-rich foods, which isn't the goal that we're going for. So if you're the kind of person that really just doesn't like water, or you feel like it's boring, there's ideas to kind of jazz up your water. You could add some mint, you could add some cucumber slices or some frozen fruit to add a little bit of flavor, lime wedges, lemon wedges, orange wedges, things like that. So the point about limiting red and processed meat, I will say that data is slightly conflicting, but the recommendation overall is still to limit the intake of red meat and to replace it with other sources of protein. And specifically, I know colon cancer links in research to decrease risk with the limitation of the red and the processed meats. So instead, it's a good idea to choose protein, such as plant-based or fish or white meats most of the time. And then in terms of the processed meats, it's important to use those sparingly, like your lunch meats, your hot dogs, and the bacon. It's important to really kind of try to limit those as much as possible. And so we talked before about limiting highly processed and refined grains. So I just want to remind you that not all processed foods are equal. And if anybody has questions at the end about that, I'll be happy to go over that in more detail. So just really consider the terms like mostly and most of the time. So instead of saying like, well, I'm never going to eat any processed foods, well, that's not really practical or realistic because so many foods are processed. But there is a difference between, say, whole wheat bread, right, which is minimally processed, say, and then, I don't know, like something else that's really processed. I can't think right now, like a really processed snack food that has a shelf stable life of, 6 months. That something shelf stable for that long, chances are it's really processed and it has things in it that allow that food to be shelf stable most of the time. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then overall dietary patterns are key, which is important to keep in mind. So, you've heard of the term moderation. And so that's something that I think is important to be mindful of when you're going through your day-to-day choices. And I think Nancy just put in the comments, Cheese Whiz as an example of an overly processed food. Yes, that is the perfect example. Thank you for saying that. So, so that would be an example of something that's just overly processed that you want to minimize in the diet. Okay. And then I wanted to say that supplements. So I get so many questions on supplements, and I always say, ask your doctor, ask your oncologist, because there's just so many on the market. But the short answer is most of the time, I would say save your money. It's better to eat the whole food to reap the most benefits. Nutrients in the whole foods, they really work synergistically with each other, as opposed to if you're having a supplement, it's really, it's made in the lab, it's definitely processed. You're not reaping all the benefits as if you were to just eat the whole food, because again, the food compounds work together in the body. And then it's important to know that current laws, they don't always regulate ingredients. So you could think you're getting something because it has a really pretty nice label on it that's claiming to do X, Y, and Z, but there's really no law that regulates those ingredients. So if you are going to choose a supplement, it needs to be certified by a third party. And then you really need to do your research to see what the ingredients are, if they interact with any of the medications that you're taking. And then if there's the term proprietary blend, it's important to know that there's no regulation with that blend. So if what you're aiming for is claiming to do X, Y, and Z because of this proprietary blend, just know that there's nobody to regulate what's in that blend. And if you look on the label, there's always stars, like next to the ingredients under proprietary blend, there's stars. So they're never gonna say how many grams is in that blend. They're just gonna make the claim. So there technically could be like 2% of what they're claiming, and then the rest could just be like brown rice or something like that. And there's no way of knowing which bottle you're gonna get. Possible exceptions, still discuss with your doctor, include vitamin D supplements, B12, and calcium. So this slide is actually taken directly from the Beach Cities Health District Plant-Based Eating Guide. And it was taken from Harvard Medical School, and it just gives a visual recommendation. Remember that everybody's needs are going to be different based on activity level, medical conditions, and appetite. And so as you can see from this illustration, half of the plate includes vegetables and fruits. And then about a quarter of the plate contains whole grains. And then a quarter of the plate contains healthy protein. And then there's some fat on the side, as well as, water, so non-sugary drink. Okay. And then to put that into real food terms, some meal examples, which of course are going to vary based on preferences, food allergies, medical conditions, all of that. So an example would be oatmeal with soy milk, berries, whole wheat toast with peanut butter as a breakfast example. Lunch example would be bean and cheese burrito with a side salad, some extra virgin olive oil, and a fruit bowl. And then dinner example would be like salmon with brown rice, broccoli, extra virgin olive oil, and fresh lemon as examples. So what I would do is I would just kind of think about what you like to eat, if that makes sense with your particular dietary and medical needs, and then kind of just replace, like, okay, instead of oatmeal, you don't really like that, like what's another whole grain that you could do? Looking at the proteins, if you don't really like those, what's another, healthy protein that you could add in, and then just really aiming to have a good portion of fruits and vegetables throughout the day. So snacks are considered, sort of just to bridge your appetite between one meal to the next, to keep your blood sugar stable. And snacks also are just more opportunities to give your body different types of nutrition. So here are some snack ideas: apple and peanut butter, a low-fat Greek yogurt with fruit and pumpkin seeds, veggies and hummus, trail mix and fruit, and then some avocado toast with seeds. So those are some snack ideas that are balanced and full of nutrition. If you're a visual person and you like to take, a list to the grocery store or to shop online, I found this to be very helpful, not only for myself, but for my clients as well. And this is a free resource also. It's found on, I think it's on the last slide, Old Ways, I want to say, but it's a Mediterranean diet grocery list, and it categorizes all the different foods to make it a very smooth and easy shopping experience. And then I just want to say too, that if you still are, experiencing any side effects from treatment, because they do tend to linger, the length differs for every patient. So if you are still experiencing, problems with fatigue or change of taste, chewing problems or swallowing problems, then it's just going to take a little bit of creativity and more, one-on-one discussion with your doctor or dietitian to figure out how to shift your eating to this, while still addressing those challenges too. So here's some resources. And then we're gonna demonstrate actually a nutrient-rich salad or a healthy salad guide. And so I know you might be thinking, well, salad, of course, all salad is healthy. That's not necessarily the case. Yes, all salad is healthy, but there are ways to build salads to make sure that you're hitting all the components for heart-healthy protein and getting as much vitamins and minerals as possible, heart-healthy fats, and also whole grains. This cooking demo does reflect a lot of the things that we talked about today in a healthy eating pattern. And so what we're starting out with is we are starting out with our bed of greens. So we have butter leaf lettuce and also spinach. And then we have some plant-based protein, which happens to be chickpeas. And we have our whole grain, which is whole wheat pasta, cooked and chilled. And the chickpeas, by the way, they're canned and rinsed and drained. And then for other colorful fruits and veggies, we have, let's see here, I don't want to spill this. So we have some cucumber, we have some tomatoes, and we have some colorful carrots. And then for our heart healthy fat, we do have some sliced almonds and some mozzarella cheese, which is the lower in saturated fat option. It's part skim milk. And then we have some strawberries on the side for some fun. Something I want to note about the strawberries and the tomatoes is that they are rich sources of vitamin C. And so if you didn't know, vitamin C does play a role in helping our body to absorb iron. And so since these chickpeas have iron in them, the vitamin C is going to help our bodies use that iron a little bit better and more efficiently. So is that all? Yes, that's everything. So all we're going to do is we're just going to combine these guys. And when you're thinking about having like a salad as a meal, you really want to make sure you hit all the targets for protein and starch, because if you just have a salad, for a meal, you're going to be hungry 20 minutes later. And fat as well. So we are getting some protein and some fat from this cheese. And we're getting some protein, some fat, some zinc from these almonds. And then we're just demonstrating that we can incorporate color by simply adding a variety of fruits and vegetables to our meal. So then for the dressing, we're going to do something simple. I always just like to do just an olive oil and lemon or olive oil and vinegar mixture. So for today, we are doing olive oil and some red wine vinegar. Depending on how, how much vinegar you like to taste versus olive oil. I usually do probably more olive oil than vinegar, but it's completely up to you. Optional ingredients would be like avocado, maybe some apple slices or pumpkin seeds, but it's really up to your preference. And we're just gonna drizzle that on there. And then depending on, how hungry you are or what you have planned in your day, you could always use more pasta or more chickpeas, less lettuce. You could always add like a side of whole grain toast. There is some flexibility with that. And then I always like to plate my food in a eye-appealing dish. Could have left it in here, but it's a really big bowl, so. Okay, and then like I said, we do have some extra vitamin C rich food on the side. We have some strawberries, which also adds some nice color and gives us a little more antioxidants and phytochemicals. So there you go.